Welcome on board to this FreeICT podcast. I'm joined today with Steve Mellings. Welcome, Steve. Uh,
Good afternoon, Sergio. Nice to be chatting with you today.
yeah, finally we are making it. So I'm really glad. Also, first of all, as an introduction, I would like to address that we are very happy that Adisa and that Adisa and ITAD provider decided to join Free ICT Europe. That's something really big for us, and we do want to congratulate you for joining us and congratulating us for having you as well. Before we move to some questions, maybe you can introduce yourself to our listeners so that they have a better view at who you are and what is Adisa as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So we are a certification body. So we are an audit company effectively, and we audit companies against standards.
Mhm.
Now, our background is that we have an ICT recovery standard, which is where the relevance for yourselves kicks in, which we've been running for about 14 years now. Now, that has been formally recognised in the UK as a GDPR certification scheme, so it's recognised as being compliant with law, and we've got the application into the Irish Data Commission now for it to be recognised across all the European countries under EU GDPR. That's quite challenging because all the different member states have different processes to
Mhm.
follow, and it's going to take some time. So that's kind of where we are. Our expertise relevant to this space is probably twofold. First of all, we audit ITADs, companies who recover assets and sanitize the media. So we're really focused on data protection and compliance. But we also have a test lab where we verify data sanitization tools. So I won't mention brands because that's not fair, but we work with companies worldwide. We've got a Chinese product in the lab right now, and we've also got one coming in from the west coast of the US as well. So our experience in this area is about looking at the service providers, but also
Mhm.
looking at the products that they use to sanitize media.
Okay, and tell us more then about you as well, so that our listener can know a bit more about you.
My background, I worked in the channel providing IT for a long time, and I was thrown the project. Oh, I had hair then, mid 90s, of looking at what the company, the channel partner I worked for, what were they doing with the redundant equipment? Because the good old days of IT, everybody just kept buying new, and what
Mhm.
was happening to the old, nobody cared about because it was just all about the latest and greatest box of tricks. And so I set up a product lifecycle program, and this is mid 90s, and we were recovering old IT assets from mainly in London, mainly from the city, so financial
Mhm.
services, and taking them to a facility and doing stuff to them. It wasn't very good. It was very agricultural, but there was nothing else like it. And so that was my first exposure to, I guess, ITAD as it's become. I don't like
Mhm.
the term ITAD anymore, but that was my first exposure. So selling those services into businesses and actually delivering the operational piece of it, and making sure that we were managing data to an appropriate level. Um, so we started Adisa in 2011 because, and I still feel that this business process is still in its immaturity. What happens to end of life products and the opportunities that they offer businesses is very, very significant. But opportunity for bad things, data breach, but also opportunities for good things, social impact, revenue, financial gain,
Mhm.
but also to support circularity and to extend the product life cycle. And I think that the industry that sits at the back of organizations now, it's really a strategic industry. And what we saw at Adisa was that back in 2010, 2011, when we launched, was it kind of lacked a bit of an identity.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people who were either brokers or waste organizations, but there was a few coming through with that professional structure to it. And so we looked at it and we thought data is a commodity that's coming into this area. It's clearly got value to organizations and they're precious about it. We need to bring standards into play. And that's where the idea for Adisa came in, where we wanted to look at risk and how risk within the process exists and how that risk could be managed. And that's really where we're very different, I think, than other certifications in this area, because we're not about recycling. That's a byproduct. And
Mm-hmm.
we're not really about reuse. That's a byproduct. We're about the security aspect and the compliance aspect of the process. So for my sins, I started Adisa with a chap called John Sutton who used to work at GCHQ. And then we launched with no government mandate. Nobody wanted us, and started trying to build our value proposition out. And that's where we are today. We've morphed into a broader certification body. So we work in other industries. The legal sector, for example, is a new one that we're adding. And it's all based on the premise of evaluating what businesses do, making sure that they do what they should be doing, and making sure that we do that consistently. So we're a UCAS accredited body as well, which means we have people come and audit us, as they did a couple of months ago, 2 days in here. Two guys from UCAS came in and checked to make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing.
You are just mentioning that you don't like ITAD anymore. What would you prefer instead of
Oh,
ITAD? And also, maybe you can just explain what is ITAD, because I mean, I'm assuming some people would not, just not have a clue if they're listening to us.
it's a great question, Sergio. Funny enough, I've just done some slides and I've jumped in using the acronym. ITAD can mean two things: IT asset disposal, often used
Hmm.
in the UK, and I might be the reason for that, or in the US, it's IT asset disposition. Now, I'm not necessarily sure that that's the right term to use anymore for an industry that offers so many different services, and I'm not quite sure what the right term is, Sergio. I'm very open to ideas and collectively something which we can label ourselves with. But I think that the industry that sits in this space does so much more now, and I'm sure we'll talk about repairs and things like that. But it's a data protection industry, it's a security industry, it's a sustainability industry, it's a revenue generating industry, it's a brand protection industry, and it is a recycling and brokerage industry. So it's got lots of aspects to it that I think that the title ITAD is perhaps
Yeah,
too
kind of,
binary.
yeah. It's maybe too restrictive
Yeah.
for the entire scope of what you are tackling in a way. I'm jumping to Free ICT Europe because I'm really interested in basically the reasons or what pushed your organization to join Free ICT Europe.
Jan, I've met Jan over the years, and you'll all know Jan. And I'd heard him speak, and I really liked the narrative, affecting change from the top down, and looking to get to the center of the decision makers and influence that, and have those changes cascade out from a central point. So I've always been a supporter of Free ICT Europe. However, I've always been one of those people sat on the sidelines going, "You do a great job, but I'm not getting involved." Um, and Jan always shames me. Whenever I see him on the circuit, the speaking circuit, he always shames me about, "Why aren't you joining? Why aren't you joining?" It's not that he's kind of tracked me down, because the motivation to sort of join and help whatever way we can was always been there. It was time. Adisa, as a small business, was going through a lot of transformations as we try and find out, who are we, where are we going, what is our strategy, and we've spent the last, and COVID was quite useful for us actually, because it enabled us to have a little bit more time to consider who we were. And we've made some good strategic decisions, and we're on a good pathway now for sustained growth. And that enables me as the owner, to start looking at some of the things on my to-do list, which are the nice to do but not must do. And Free ICT and its objectives are something which I personally feel very strongly about. And it enables me next time I see Jan, when we have a beer, to not sort of feel ashamed that I've not put some money into this, but to actually say, what are we collectively doing rather than what are you doing? So it's very much the culmination of 10 years of sitting on the sidelines, Sergio, and eventually saying, yeah, I need to get involved in this in whatever way I can.
Yeah, you mentioned the activities that Free ICT Europe are undergoing underdoing related to policies, and especially the voice, being trying to be the voice of the industry there in Brussels, for example, but also at national level. In your opinion, what are the biggest issues related to policy and also to the economy? as a general that you are seeing that could affect your sector also, or generally speaking, the IT sector as well?
It's a really good question, and I'll give you a very long answer. Um, I think I I think we're moving away from seeing IT as a commodity, and I think if you think it's only a short period of time when we had, and I'm much older than you, when we had our first PCs and email addresses, it's within my lifetime. So we're not talking, a long, 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 long time ago. Um, and I think that the manufacturing, distribution, use, and then disposal of IT was there was it's viewed as a commodity, and it was very much there to enable business to take place. It wasn't seen as a strategic resource. And I think where we are now is that we're beginning to look collectively at lots of different parts of society and how we operate as individuals and businesses. We look at, I guess, the sustainable aspect of it. We can't just keep consuming raw material, consuming products, and being dismissive of products when we've finished with our time to use them. And I think if you look at other industries, car industry is a good example. There is a vibrant second-hand car industry, and nobody
Mhm,
thinks twice about buying a second-hand car. You'd like to buy from the main dealer where it's gone through a proper test and check. But there's also your budget may not afford you to do that. So you have to buy from, the open market. And I kind of use the car industry as a slight analogy to ICT, because we should, and I know that there is a vibrant second-hand IT market, but it's still viewed, I think, as a risk. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Your question was challenges, and I think prejudice about the
mhm,
quality of second-hand equipment leads, and that plays into the narrative of the manufacturers, of course. New is better, but I think that the biggest problem that we have is changing the perception of um, refurbished, remanufactured equipment to enable people to view it as a viable alternative to new. And I know there's loads of great stuff. Free ICT Europe's doing some great stuff. Interact, a company up in the north of England, Rich Kenny's doing some phenomenal stuff with Astrid there about the performance of second-hand equipment and
mhm,
older equipment compared to new. So there's some really, really, really good stuff going on here. And if you look at the other challenge that I see going right round from the end of life piece, is actually how some of this equipment is being designed. And it's almost being designed for one use. We need to be able to swap parts out more readily than we can. We need the ability to understand how some of this stuff um, it works together. We've just taken a MacBook, perfectly serviceable MacBook apart, and we were struggling to find the schematics for it. So we've had to
mhm.
break it apart and look at the components to see if we can start uh, looking to form an attack and recover data on some of the storage areas. And so when you go online to try and find some of this information, which a repair person would do, it's not there, which means you can't repair this stuff, or you have to do it freehand, which means that the ability for you to say this has been repaired as per the manufacturer's instructions is gone. And I think that's the other challenge I see. It's moving away from this consume, 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 and looking at technology and products as a life cycle and looking at it from a first use, second use, third use potentially. And then when it goes into recycling, can we recycle the parts effectively? Do we have the capabilities to recycle it? And some of the stuff that bioleaching that's going on now is fantastic. Is it scalable? Well, I think so. Certainly NTS think it is. So I think that all of this good stuff is happening now as well. So I think it's a good time. It's exciting time. I think for the first time in 10 years, there's lots of factors. The manufacturers are beginning to talk about eco design. Um, some of this is coming through. There's some great stuff going on in that space. The industry is beginning to switch on to becoming repair rather than just passing
Mhm.
products through. And I think corporates are now looking at the equipment and saying we need to be a bit more strategic in what we're doing with our acquisition process, but also our end of life strategy, rather than just firing it out into an industry in an uncontrolled fashion, beginning to look at it from a strategic perspective.
Yeah, I do really like your analogy between the car industry and the ICT industry, because I do believe that's definitely a good mirror for us to look into, because what has been done by the car aftermarket sector has been brilliant over the years, and that's definitely something that ideally other sectors, including the ICT, aftermarket sector should just reflect and try to set up the same, because we have a better market that is more functioning. Cars are lasting longer, and that's what we want. I think as if not only as actors of the industry, but also as citizens for the future. Um, I'm also thinking on about what do you think are really the what can really free ICT brings can bring to the ITAD sector in terms of policy, or maybe in terms of connections between the diverse sectors
Yep.
that we are representing. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Leadership, I think. Everybody, and I was one of these people who sit on the side and they go, yeah, it's good. You could do this, you could do that. And I think it takes people to stop commentating and start doing. And everybody's busy, and you can use that as an excuse. I have historically. Or you can decide to actually get involved and make a difference. To do that, you need to actually have some focal point. And I see Free ICT Europe as that focal point. And I see there have been lots of strings to its bows, and for it not being about what you can do, but about what we can do collectively under the banner. And if we all have a common set of goals, which should be about um, making the product life cycle manageable. We need all manufacturers to design reuse into
Mhm,
equipment at the beginning. We need them to share some of the information that we would need as a sector to repair. We need the drive manufacturers to start sharing firmware specifications so we can understand data sanitization techniques, which may or may not be undermined by firmware. There's a whole bunch of things that need to take place to enable the circular economy where ICT is concerned to really become now, not tomorrow. And I think there's enough players in the market now. There's enough people, there's enough capability. Free ICT Europe for me is a focal point. It's great people, but it's also got a really lovely narrative. It's not a new thing. It's been around a long time.
mhm.
It has a success story. It understands how to influence, and it is at that top table. And so I think it's time for organisations like Adisa and many others to start falling into line and actually supporting and helping and coming up with ideas, but also give time. And I know I've spoken to Jan previously about one of the biggest challenges, and I understand the resource commitments that you have. It's time is one of the biggest challenges. And I think if there are more people who can add a little bit, do the heavy lifting together, we can probably achieve more.
Yeah, there is time, but also there is always this, let's say, this dichotomy between what I call the business timeline and the decision-making process
Yeah.
timeline, where it's never aligned. And I mean, you run your own business, so when you want to take a decision, you can take a decision. But someone creating a new law or trying to just say to update a legislation will need much more time, because the process is different, and that's also the difficulty that we can face sometimes. Uh, that technology is just going so fast that legislation can't really catch up.
And I think this is an interesting point to discuss because I think this is where the industry can help because
Hmm.
those who set the law often follow. And if something becomes common practice, it's almost that the law is there to rubber stamp. You don't need to wait for a legal justification to affect a change. Collectively, an industry can influence that change. We've proven it at Adisa in the UK. Small country, small landmass, but over 10 years, we've managed to actually change an industry quite significantly. And that's not just by us, by the way. That is the industry has supported us, has got behind us, has offered their time and their consideration, as well as their money, of course, to enable us to achieve what we've managed to achieve in this country. And I think we can do that as an industry. I think falling behind ICT Europe, it shouldn't just be about hoping that are able to have affect a law change or policy. That's one of our objectives. But I think there's that collective responsibility to look at how can we change. Should we be bringing in requirements, guidelines, code of practices, all this type of good stuff? Can we do more on our own without waiting for the law? Because the law, as you say, Sergio, I'm working with government in the UK at the moment on a project for 5 years now, and I knew the answer 5 years ago, and you just got to let the wheels of power turn. You can't influence them. Um, and I think that's the bit that I like about free ICT. It's not just one effort. It's not just about lobbying Brussels. It's about bringing people together, having a
Mhm.
conversation, and looking at what we can do today, and using it as that central point. That's where I really see the benefit of that central point of what you guys do.
Brilliant. You are also mentioning, and I think that's going to be a perfect transition for our conclusion. You are mentioning that we are actually uh, an old organization. I will not say old, but we are celebrating our 10 years
Yep.
this year with a conference that is going to take place in Dublin. We will put the link to the conference in the pinned comments for people if you are interested to join. There are still availabilities, but Adisa as well is organizing a yearly conference if I'm correct. So maybe you can have a few words if you want to promote your conference.
Fantastic. It's the promotion time. It wasn't about promotion for agreeing to do this, but now you've offered me the chance, I will. Yes, we're running an event in London. We do these annual events, and we try to keep changing the style a little bit to try and make it relevant to the industry. And so for this year, we've been a bit grander. We're at the QE2 Conference Centre in Westminster, which is a huge venue. And we're talking about the product life cycle. So it's not just about ITAD. We're talking about eco design. We're talking about the right to repair. Jan is coming to
Mhm.
speak. And we're talking about scope 3 reporting, as well as data sanitization, remarketing, and remanufacturing. So we're going to try and cover all the aspects of the product lifecycle management, if you like, from the start of the manufacturing process through to the end of life recycling piece. And the reason for that is that we don't just want the industry here. The industry is clearly the key for what Adisa is what we want to do. But I think if we want to influence change, we need to get the users of technology involved in this as well. So we're reaching out for this event to the enterprise to get people who are buyers, consumers, and disposers of technology, to get them to see the levels of intelligence and complexity there is into a process that if you don't understand it, it's I'll just dispose, not knowing how that process really works, the flippancy of it. And so we've got really great speakers. October the 17th. Go to adisa.global. You'll see it on the website. Um, Everybody's welcome. Um, Proceeds from sales, all the profit from sales goes to the beneficiaries. Free ICT Europe is one of our beneficiaries, so they will be receiving, or Sergio, will be receiving 33% of the profit that we make from the ticket sales. As we've done previously, we gave £5,000 to the Digital Poverty Alliance last year, and we're hoping to make that 15,000 to the 3 beneficiaries this year. And the idea is that this isn't about making money. This is about getting people to come, to learn, to challenge their perception, and to go away to their own businesses in their own life with something which they can actually act upon, a change or a
Mhm.
conversation to have. And that's the objective of the event.
Brilliant, brilliant. I will also add that to the pin as pin under that video in case some people wanna join and also wanna have more information. I think that's all. I don't know if you have a final remark before we close this out, Steve.
No, not at all. Other than if you're like me, my sales pitch for you guys. If you're like me, don't sit on the sidelines. There's a lot of hard work that goes in to trying to make change, and it can only be for everybody's benefit. So we do need to collectively support organisations like Free ICT Europe because you're doing the hard work. And I think the least that we can do is to support you with a little bit of a donation, but also with time, and do what we can to make your objectives become more real for us all.
Yeah, I can't think of a better sentence to end this. So thank you for your time, Steve. It was a real pleasure to chat with you over this 25 half an hour, and I'm really looking forward to continue to learn more about your sector in the future, and also to collaborate with you in the next few months.
Brilliant, Sergio. Really nice to spend this time with you, and thank you for the opportunity to chat to everybody today.
See you, people.
Thank you. Bye bye.